Hi everyone, may peace be on you all, and welcome to another episode of I'm a Muslim and That's Okay. And I am back with my segment, The Whole Muslim, and it is October. Can you believe it? 2021 flew by. It's October. Apart it from being the first official month of fall, October is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's one of those things that we all know about, but we don't like talking about it. And I was just looking at the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence website, and just in the US alone, more than 10 million adults experience domestic violence annually. That makes it 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men that experience domestic violence. So somebody that you know may be experiencing domestic violence and you don't even know about it. And that's why I have my guest here, Khalidah Bilal. She is I can't even begin to express how incredible Sister Khalidah is. And she is a domestic violence survivor, and she also works with other people who have been in situations of domestic violence through Khadijah's house that she has helped establish. Please welcome Khalidah Bilal. Please tell us about yourself.
Hey, so my name is Khalidah. I graduated from DAAWN in 2007 during the DAAWN program. I've been in the United States. Before I went to Trinidad, in England, I worked in social services. I worked with teenagers who had challenging behavior. And a lot of the reasons why you find teenagers with challenging behavior is that you find that when you get down to the root of what that challenge is, somewhere along the line there was some kind of abuse, know. So in the work that I did, like once we came across a young girl who she was adopted into, and the family that adopted her had been abusing her for maybe 10 years. And the only reason why they found out is because they were also abusing the animals, and an animal got sick, and then the NSPCC, the Animal Society, the Royal Society of Protection for Animals, they alerted social services, and when social services investigated the situation, they found out, all these things. So, domestic abuse is something that in one way or another, I've been involved in it for years. Marrying my current husband, he runs an organization called Huma-Faith, and they provide housing to homeless men and women here in the DFW. And one of the houses that they had is called Khadijah's house. So Khadijah's house had to close down because of COVID and everything. So, we've been working towards getting it back up. And one of the programs that we run from the house is domestic violence. It's called DAAWN, Domestic Abuse Against Women Nullified.
Right. That's a lot to take. Really unpack, Khalidah. And that's what I want to, help our audience go back on. You have, since the very beginning, worked with individuals that are vulnerable. If you could explain to us, what is it that brings individuals into the situation? And, the most common thing that you get to hear is that, why couldn't they get away from it? It's as simple as, just upping and leaving. So please tell us that why are vulnerable individuals, whether they be children, spouses, why are they unable to get away from these situations?
That's such a nuanced question. There is no one reason, right? Because everybody's situation is different.
Right.
One of the things that I think that I like to talk about is the fact that, first of all, people are kind of groomed towards abusive relationships from youth, right? You know, your parents used to beat you, your parents were abusive, your parents said, you know, your parents were emotionally abusive, your parents were physically abusive, whatever it is, but they loved you, right?
So that's a loaded question, Khalidah.
Right. So in your mind, what's happened is that you have made a decision in your mind, right, that people who love you beat you. People who love you can say mean things to you.
Right.
People who love you can do horrible things to you, right? Because you were brought up in that environment.
Right.
A lot of people of color, right, are brought up in that situation.
Right.
And that is like, for me, you know, I hypothesize that this is what we've inherited from slavery and colonization. Right. Because our slave masters, our colonizers, that's what that's what they did to us. Right. Okay. They beat us, they degraded us, they debased us as human beings. And then we have in turn, you know, we've had to internalize that, right? And then we hand it down from generation to generation to generation. So it's literally a generational curse.
Right.
Because, you know, like parents talk about spare the rod and spoil the child. And all this kind of stuff, right? So therefore, abuse is normalized in our society as people of color, right? So by the time you get to the place where you are now in an abusive relationship, well, first of all, by the time you actually realize it's abusive, you probably got a few kids. Right. You know, you're invested in that relationship in some kind of way, whether it's financial investment, and it's normally financial, emotional, physical, you know, you've uprooted and you've gone somewhere with this person. That's the physical investment. Right. You've got financial investment, you know, maybe you don't work, or if you do work, both of you work together, right? You know, you've got kids involved. There's so many things that make it difficult for you to just say, oh, you know what, I'm walking away. Right. And then you've got the psychology of this person, because people who love you abuse you. So he loves you, right? Or they love you, because men get abused too, right? So they love you. They abuse you. They say sorry. They tell you they love you, and it's all okay again. Right.
And that's the thing. I think that's what people don't understand, is that we have held on to so many of these toxic things. I mean, you mentioned that in parenting, that we have experienced it, that those before us, that beating your kids was considered all right, that if you didn't beat your kid, you're definitely doing something wrong. And when that shift from a parent-child relationship to not just husband, any spousal relationship, is not that big of a shift. So, I mean, if the other person gets angry at you and beats you or strikes you, there's still a chance that the other person loves you. And I think that's what we get trapped in. And the other thing I wanted to really ask you about, it's like, people do sort of recognize physical abuse as bad, but if you could really bring into highlight emotional abuse, because I think people are still not clear what emotional abuse is, because it's so vague in people's minds.
Well, I think, you know, that's why my program is called DAAWN, right? Domestic abuse against women, and not domestic violence, because a lot of times, if this person is not hitting you, then it's okay, right? You know, but abuse comes in so many different forms, right? Because you've got the emotional abuse. You know, what are you wearing? You look like a whore in that. What are you doing? Why do you know? Why are you so careless? Why are you so stupid? Why can't you do this? Okay. you've got that kind of abuse that rips away at your self-confidence.
Right.
No one's gonna love you like I do.
Right.
I'm the only one that loves you.
Right.
You're so lucky to have me in your life.
Right.
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 Then you've got financial abuse. I'm not, women don't even have money for sanitary towels.
Oh,
I've heard stories of women using their babies' diapers for sanitary towels because they are being held on a financial string.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Right.
Because financial abuse, maybe you're here and you don't have work visa,
right,
or you don't have what you need. Maybe you've been in this relationship since you left school, and you're not qualified, you don't have work experience or whatever it is. Okay,
right.
So you're financially dependent on this person.
Right.
That financial, so now I give you the money that you need to buy anything that you want. Right? Or it could be a flip. I do all the work, I earn all the money, but I have to give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you decide what happens to the money that I earn.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I have no control over my finances.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have spiritual abuse.
And again, that's one of those other things that people, they're so afraid to talk about it, but it happens so often. Spiritual abuse, because you can't put a finger on it. Like for domestic violence, when there's actual violence, you have evidence to show. But with emotional and spiritual and financial abuse, you don't have evidence to show. So please, yes, spiritual abuse. Tell us how that works.
I mean, I'm the imam.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the leader of this household.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can't do this. Where'd you go? Who were you with?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that person. You can't, I mean, I'm a firm believer in traditional roles, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a believer in women have roles and men have roles. That so I'm a traditionalist in the way that I perceive successful relationships can work, right? Mm-hmm. But at the, there's this line, right, where you transgress past that line, okay, where a man wants to control everything about you, right? Well, Allah says, well, Allah says, if you don't do this, then Allah is not going to be pleased with you. If you do that, then Allah is not pleased with you. If Allah is not pleased with you, you're going to go to hell.
And that's such the difficult part about this. For those who do exist with religious backgrounds or from religious backgrounds, doesn't matter which religion they belong to, there is always this overwhelming sense of a dictatorship that exists in it, especially when it comes to the roles of women. And the thing is, most of the knowledge is passed down from a patriarch. So how do you know where that line exists and that line has been crossed? I think that's my question. I think,
I've had so many people say that, especially women, this was done by a man, right? But, if you look at Islam, your example is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his wives, right? So, okay, let's look at that relationship. Was there any abuse in that relationship? Can you find the abuse? It doesn't exist. Do you understand what I'm saying? He wasn't abusing his wives. He wasn't controlling his wives. He wasn't manipulating his wives. He wasn't doing any of those things, right? So this whole concept of, using the, specifically the religion of Islam to oppress women, right? If you really go and you have a look at it, no, that's not true. Like people, I was having a debate the other day about, whether or not you can beat your children, right?
Right.
And I challenged anyone, you show me one time where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ beat his wife. You show me where he beat his child. Tell me a hadith where he beat one of his children. It doesn't exist. But he said that you could. Yeah, because this was a time where that's what people did.
Right.
It's like it was a time where there was like slavery was prevalent, right?
Right.
So he couldn't just come in and say no slavery. Right? Because you can't just wipe it out like that. It's something that you have to get rid of it gradually. Right? And the same thing with abusing your children or your wives or whatever. It's something that you had to get rid of gradually. He was there. He came in a time when families buried their daughters. Right? Okay, that was the level of abuse that was exacted against women. Right? So then he's just gonna come, da-da, and just make it all, make women this fantastic thing. That's got to be you've got to teach it little by little by little. Otherwise, society would have rejected it. Okay, so therefore, he might have said, well, you can beat them lightly or whatever. Well, I mean, we won't even get into what beating lightly means. But my point is that nobody can tell you that he did that. If it was such a good thing, then he would have done it. And if he didn't do it, there's your proof right there that it's not okay. But people they don't want to. If you look at how the Prophet Muhammad was with his wives, he loved his wives. If you look at how he was with his daughters, it's funny because only his daughters survived. All of his sons died. And look at how he treated his daughters. He treated them like queens. They walked in the room, he would get up and give them his seat. They were like, queens in his life. So where's the abuse? So how do you justify abusing women in your life? Where does it come from? Do you see what I'm saying? So people can translate, men, can translate abuse. Parents can translate their abuse, use anything to justify their abuse if they want to. But that's because they want to justify their abuse. That's like statistics. You can take statistics and make it say anything you want it to say. But really, the truth is that there is no justification for it.
So if we have, and as I mentioned in the statistics, there are 10 million adults who go through this annually. If somebody even has an inkling that they are going through this, it doesn't necessarily have to be like violence against them. A lot of time it is, but even if it's like emotional, financial, spiritual abuse, what is the next step that they need to take? Because it's not as easy as getting up and just walking off.
It isn't. The exit of any relationship has to have a plan. You have to have a plan, because statistically, a person leaves 7 times.
Wow.
Before they actually really leave.
Oh, wow.
That's a statistic. So that means you leave, you go back, 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 you leave. 7 times before you actually leave. And a lot of that is because when you left, you didn't really have a plan, or you wasn't emotionally ready, or you weren't financially ready, or where you left and you went to, the situation was so bad there that you decided you would go back. You know what I'm saying? So the first thing is to really, have a plan. Where are you going to go? How are you going to get there? And when are you going to go? Especially if you've got someone who is, really violent, because a lot of times when you have those people who are violent like that, and is really dangerously violent, then you're talking about somebody who's probably got mental health issues. Do you know what I'm saying? A lot of people are not necessarily in such extreme violent relationships. They're not in such extreme abusive relationships. A lot of people are in abusive relationships that are, from the outside looking in, everything's fine.
And that's the thing. I mean, with that, like I said, you don't even feel physically the abuse.
Mm.
So how do you get yourself out of that when you're mentally not sure sometimes that if it's actual abuse or not?
Well, I think that it's abuse.
Right.
You know it's abuse because you know you're feeling oppressed by it, right?
Right.
It's inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
You're being abused because you're not comfortable with it. Deep down inside of you, you're not comfortable. You're not happy because you're in an oppressive situation. If it's oppressive, it's abuse.
I think people need to hear that. Please repeat that, Khalidah, that if you're oppressed, it's abuse.
If it's oppressive, it's abuse.
Yes.
If you feel like you are being, like emotionally or psychologically sat on, right? If you feel like that metaphoric knee is on your neck, then it's abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But there is a second thing, Khalidah, and it's one of those things that people of color also experience, is that this kind of abuse is so prevalent. It's like, but my so-and-so also has this kind of relationship. So am I being crazy for thinking that it's abuse? How do you get out of that?
The first thing I want to say to you, right, is that statistically, Black women are the most abused women in the world.
Oh, wow.
Black women suffer more violence against them. Like when you look at domestic violence statistics, the statistic of Black women far surpasses their actual representation in society.
Wow.
Right? So, people of color are more likely to be abused. And of those people of color, Black women are going to be the most abused women, right? That's like a statistic that is an undeniable statistic worldwide, right? So Black women are at the bottom of every society. Okay. So, going back to, so what does that mean? That means that as a Black woman, my mom was probably abused, right? And her mom was probably abused, and her mom was probably abused, and her mom was probably abused. So the likelihood of you having that generational curse of abuse is very high.
It's very high. Yes.
It's very high. Because, that's just because statistically, if we're the most abused segment of society, that means that you probably have the people around you being abused too. So that means that, this goes back to me saying that abuse becomes normalized, right?
Right.
And so it's normal, right? We are then tasked with breaking that curse. We are then tasked with recognizing it, identifying it, and saying, no, that's abuse. Right. If I can't feel free to say no, for example, right? You might be my husband, but I can say no, I don't want to have sex. And if I say no, I don't want to have sex, and you insist, then we've gone into abuse, right? If I can't speak my mind in a relationship in a respectful way, right? If we can't even have a heated disagreement without it becoming you telling me about how terrible I am, then that's, then we're not in a productive relationship. Right? Because it's not okay for us to be arguing about bread and we go from arguing about bread to telling me how fat I am. Right? You know what I'm saying? Now we transitioned into abuse, because we can argue about bread and whether or not I should eat bread. Right? That's a reasonable argument to have. No,
or the thermostat, that's the one of those things.
Right, exactly. But now when that transitions into now you telling me about how I look or
Right.
how dumb I am or whatever, then we've gone from having a reasonable disagreement to
Right.
now it's abuse. And I have to be able to identify that now we've transitioned into an abusive exchange.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Someone told me, because I've been very open about my DV relationship,
Right.
and I've been, recently I've been giving details,
Right.
and a lot of people are offended by those details. They don't want to hear those details. They don't want to read those details.
Because it makes it real, Khalidah.
Exactly. Because everybody knew Khalidah was in an abusive relationship.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But they don't want to know the details.
Right.
So everybody knew he was a thief.
Right.
But the moment I start telling you what he stole,
right,
you don't want to know.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody knew he was a bank robber, but when we start detailing the actual specifics of the crime,
right,
now you want to blank it out. But that's not the case though, right? When you hear that person's a bank robber, you want to know the details.
Right.
When you hear that the person is a thief, you want to know the details. But when the person is an abuser, you don't want to know the details. Because you should.
I think it all also boils down to accountability. It's about how much we want to hold domestic abusers accountable.
Exactly.
And unless we denormalize the abuse, nobody's going to hold them accountable.
Right. But again, if I don't give you details,
right,
it's okay for you to sit over in your house and you know that Khalidah is being abused over there. Because let's get real.
Mm-hmm.
Most abusive relationships, everybody knows. Everybody knows that that guy is abusive.
Right.
Everybody knows, or at least some people know.
Right.
That guy, and I'm being gender specific here, so I apologize.
Either way.
But that person who's being abusive, people know that person is abusive. It's not like newsflash, this person's abusive. Everybody knows.
Right.
They just don't know the specifics.
Right.
And the way that they get to sit comfortably over there, let's talk about when you go into religious communities, right?
Right.
The way how the imam gets comfortable and is okay about, knowing that brother over there is abusive. The way how he can be comfortable about it is because he doesn't know the details.
Right. Right.
So to me, the way that you make society uncomfortable is by telling them the details.
Right.
Well, this is what he did. This is what she did. This is what they did, know?
Right.
And we, my hashtag is there can be no silence in domestic violence.
Yeah.
None, right? We have to be prepared to say, this is what this person did. This is how this person behaves. This is what they treat. This is how they treat me.
And the thing is, I completely it's amazing how you do it. I've read your posts, and I mean, I didn't even go through it, but it's painful. And I wish that I could go back and fix it for you. But the thing is, I understand the purpose of why you're doing it. But as you said, there's so many people that hated that you put it out there. So I think that's my other question, is that people know and they still choose not to do anything about it. For people who are in domestic abuse situation, at that point, then who do they turn to? Because a lot of times, even their own families, their siblings, their mothers, they go to them, they confess to them that I'm in this situation. They'll be like, oh, but it's what happened. It's how things work. What do domestic abuse survivors do in that situation when they feel so trapped and alone?
The truth of the matter, there are many, there are hotlines, there are many organizations out there that you can reach out to. We actually are organizing a domestic Violence Awareness Day on the 24th of October will be in Trinity Park.
Right.
You know, but there are so many organizations out there. The reality of it is that you as the individual going through it, that you have to be prepared to be uncomfortable.
Right.
Right? Because you're not going to walk out of that situation. And then, you know, for example, if you live in a nice house and you drive a nice car and you eat nice food, you know, it's not going to be like that when you walk away. Right. You had to decide whether or not the nice house and the nice car and the nice food is worth your soul.
Yeah.
You know, because you've got to be prepared to walk away.
Right.
You know, the status quo can't stay the same. Right. So it might mean that you have to leave your family. Right. It might mean that, you know, because people are going to tell you that it's okay to stay. I had so many people tell me, yeah, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad that you have to leave. Right. You know, I had friends tell me that. You know, I've had, you know, members of my family tell me, well, you know, basically say to me that the reason why I had to get hit, the reason why I went through my abuse is because I was too, you know, if I was just a different person, if I just had a different personality, if I was just you know, a more passive person, then it wouldn't have happened. Right. So then that's dividing the blame up. Right. That's saying that it's partly my fault because I was just too loud. I just wasn't obedient. Let's get real. That's what you're trying to say. What you're trying to say is, if I was an obedient person, I wouldn't have got hit.
It's shifting the blame, basically.
Yeah. Right. So you've got to be prepared to deal with those people who are going to not agree with you. Right. You know, and what I would say is, you know, you're gonna have to make that's part of making the plan. You know, maybe if you can save your money, right? You know, if you're in a situation where you can save money, save your money so that you can, I don't know, you know, buy that bus ticket or you know what I'm saying? Reach out to somebody. There's always, you have to feel people out and find that person that you can trust. Who's going to be able to assist you. Generally, you know, it's very difficult to leave an abusive relationship and you don't have support. You've got to find who's going to support you, whether it's going to be a friend or a neighbor or someone in your family, right? But, you know, generally there's somebody there that can support you. And if you can't find anybody in your inner circles to support you, because isolation is one of the tactics, right? So you, a lot of times you are isolated. You don't have any, you have distanced yourself from your family. So you might feel like you can't actually go and reconnect with those people. Then you have to go to, then what you would have to do is find organizations, because there are so many people out there who will help you if you're willing to get that help, you know. But again, you have to be prepared to be uncomfortable.
Right. And I will definitely get to the organization that you work for and the work you do. But before that, the one thing that I want to ask you about is that for now, we've been only talking about individuals in domestic abuse situations. But then there's a lot of times when children are involved too, like you're a spouse and there's kids. So there's always this overwhelming speech of, oh, but what about the children? If you divorce whomever, or if you leave the relationship, it will no longer be a nuclear family and it will damage the children. What is your perspective on that?
You know, if you go to most women who have been in an abusive relationship and you ask them about their kids, or you go and you talk to the kids, the kids are damaged. Okay, it's, you know, like, it's better to have one parent and a loving, level relationship than two parents in a toxic relationship, right? What do you teach your daughter? If you as a mother are in this abusive relationship,
Right.
What are you saying to your daughter? What do you think your daughter's going to do? There's only two things that's going to happen with your daughter. Either one, she's going to never get married because she's never going to want to have that. Right. Or two, she's going to marry into an abusive relationship because that's normal.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But she walks out of that relationship scarred.
Mm-hmm.
Statistics say that when boys grow up in an abusive relationship, up until the age of 13, they will sympathize with the mother. So if you exit the relationship before the boys are 13, there is a chance that those boys will grow up and be very loving husbands, and because they know what their mother went through, and so they'll sympathize and they'll actually be very good with their wives. But that after the age of 13, they actually start to sympathize more with the man and are more likely to go on and be abusive. Right. There's also statistics that say that boys that grow up in abusive relationships find it difficult to actually have long-lasting, productive, stable relationships until they're in their 40s.
Oh, wow.
It takes them until they're in their 40s before they can actually. Why? Because they grow up, they're abusive. They have a couple of abusive relationships. Then they've got to do the work on themselves, which they're probably not even going to be ready to start until they're in their late 30s.
Right.
So before they're ready to have a relationship, they're in their 40s. How many children have they had? How many relationships have they had before they've actually got to the place where they're ready to have a productive relationship?
Where they're
because you, as the parents, because you were told that it was better to stay in that relationship, you have you have resigned your children to unproductive relationships. Right.
Oh, wow. I mean, again, I think these are the things that people need to hear, that, you know, the long-lasting impact and how nuanced abuse is. And with that, I mean, I would love it if you could tell us what DAAWN does, and when you had started Khadijah's home, what you had wanted to do with those initiatives and the organization, DAAWN.
Well, I mean, first of all, I have to say that I didn't start Khadijah's house. The original Khadijah's house wasn't done by me. That was done by my husband, right? You know, I manage it because he doesn't, you know, like, it's a women's program. And so therefore, you know, I created the program DAAWN. Right. And what DAAWN seeks to do is, you know, a lot of the programs that are out there are short-term programs. Right. You know, a lot, especially for domestic violence and domestic abuse. When women enter into these programs, they're given 90 days. Right. So you go in the program and you've got 3 months, 90 days to figure it out. Right. Well, that's impossible. Right. Because most people walking out of a relationship, you know, like 90 days isn't enough. If you've never had a job before, if you have no work experience, if you have $0 in the bank, you just left with a suitcase and your kids, you're going to get to that place where you can live the rest of your life in 90 days? No, that's not possible, right? No. So what we do in DAAWN is, when you come to us, right, we want to make sure that you've got the therapeutic support that you need. Right. So we want to, you know, and you're not going to just walk into the program and then tomorrow you're ready to go sit with a counselor, right? That's not going to happen. Okay. You, first of all, you've got to develop the confidence and feel safe. Right. That in itself takes time, right? For you to be in this environment and feel like this is a safe place for you. Then once you've gotten to that place where you feel safe, then the next thing is to deal with your emotional and psychological well-being, right? So that's when you're ready for the therapeutic help. Right. And then after you've gotten to that place where you're getting the therapy, you're getting the help, you know, now you're ready to start putting your life together. Now we can look at, okay, what are your skills? Right. You know, are we gonna find you a job, or are we gonna get you the training that you need? Right. Yeah. And then once you've gotten into that place of getting the training, then you're going to get the job, then you need to save your money.
Right.
Maybe you don't even drive. You might even need to learn how to drive, right. You know, so we're going to get you the tools that you need, all right, and allow you the time that you need to get to that place, so that when you leave, you can leave and you've got, you know, a month's deposit, a month, you know, a month's emergency money, and you can move into your own home, and we'll give you the, you know, we'll contact, you know, work with the other agencies to make sure that you've got the furniture that you need, make sure that you've got everything that you need, so that when you move into your home, you have everything, right? And then do outreach with you, you know, and follow you once you've left, to make sure that you're still okay. Now, how long is that going to take?
It could take years. I mean,
exactly. Exactly. So what we're saying is, when you come to us, this is a 12 to 24 month program. Right. This is not a quick fix. You know, Khadijah's House is not an emergency. It's not, you know, people use us as, you know, they want to use us as an emergency placement, and then they feel like, well, but you don't have a success rate. If you come to us and you leave in the next 6 months, you're not going to be successful. Right. Because you cannot. Because like you said, that can take years, right? So this is a program that is a minimum of 12 months. And can take up to 24 months. For you to actually get to that place where you're ready to leave. You know, so it's a long program. You know,
and I think
and when you
that's the other thing people need to understand, that somebody coming out from an abuse situation, it's not like even like for a lot of medical conditions, it's not something you give medicine and it's fine the next day, or you have a surgery and like in 6 weeks you're back on your feet again. That's not how this works. There's so much physical and psychological damage that exists, and financial damage that exists with this.
Because if you were in a, say for example, you were a homeowner, right, and you're, you know, like walking away from that relationship might mean that your credit is going to go. You might have an eviction on you. You might lose your car might get repossessed, right? So financially, you might be, you know, your 800 score is going to go to 600. Right. There are so many repercussions, right? You know, you know, you've got the physical, you've got the financial, you've got the emotional. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, there's so many different ways that it's going to affect you, that it's not something that you're going to just like recover from.
And that's the other thing, that sometimes
you do recover,
the strain,
just not immediately.
Not immediately. Sometimes the strain of it is so much, it's very, very tempting to go back.
Exactly. Well, that's why you leave 7 times, right?
Yeah. So
because you know, when you start being uncomfortable, then you're like, I can't do this. So you go back, right? Because when you're in that form of discomfort, it feels like, well, that was better. And then you might have him or her, you might have that person telling you, come back, I'm gonna be better. You know, I'm not gonna be like that anymore. I'm sorry, right? So here you are in this uncomfortable situation, and you've got that comfortable situation over there, and that person is telling you, I'm sorry, I'm going to be better. So of course you want to go back to that comfortable situation, because this is hard, you know, and so that's what I'm saying, that, you know, you have to be ready to be uncomfortable, because it's not going to happen. You've got to be uncomfortable even in just telling the therapist what you've been through. There are some things that I have been through in my relationship that I won't post on Facebook because it's too much for Facebook. I can't. You know, I just post the light stuff. The light stuff that everybody feels like their heart is broken. That's the stuff that I post on Facebook, because there's stuff that I, you know, like, it was hard for me to tell a therapist. You know, but until you get to that place where you're able to get it out of you, to release it, you can't move on from it.
You can't, you know,
so you've got to be prepared to be uncomfortable in so many
right.
different ways.
Right. And that's the thing. That is one of, I mean, not, but one of the major things that makes leaving domestic abuse so hard. And I think what you do is incredible. Before I conclude with any of this, I would love it if you could like give the links to DAAWN and ways that people can help you do what you do.
So, okay, again, DAAWN is powered by Huma-Faith. All right. So DAAWN exists because Huma-Faith exists. Right. So if you don't help the organization as a whole, right, you know, then you can't help DAAWN. Right. So, you know, you can go to humafaith.org and you'll find the donate button links. Right. You know, the biggest thing that I would say, you know, the biggest struggle is always financial. Right. You know, people want to know, well, you know, why are you guys always begging for money? Because it's a charity. Right. And charities run on charity. You know, so one of the things that I always ask people to do is become a sustaining member. Right. You know, $10. Right. What's $10? A trip to Starbucks? 2 Starbucks. I mean, 2 Starbucks Frappuccinos. Know? That's $10. Right, exactly. $10. You know, be a sustaining member. $10 a month for over a year, right? And or, you know, if you can do more, then do more, right? But become a sustaining member and tell your friends. Right. You know, tell your friends, tell your family, encourage others to become sustaining members. That's what we need, you know. In terms of the fight against domestic abuse, I would say, you know, number one, there could be no silence, you know, like stop covering it up. Stop pretending that it doesn't exist, right? And when you help someone, don't help them with expectations. Do you know what I'm saying? Don't help someone with the expectation that they're going to leave. Right. Don't help someone with the expectation that once they've left, they're never going to go back. Right. Right? You have to just help someone because you just want to help. Right. And help unconditionally. Right. It's not that simple. It's not as simple as a one-time thing. That's the bottom line of it. Right. So I'm not saying put yourself at risk, because you also, you know, when you get into a situation where you're helping someone in an abusive relationship, then you have to be very careful. You know, as the person that's helping, you got to be very careful. It's a fine line to tread, right? But, you know, don't ignore it. Right. And then don't think that, you know, if you swept this person away and you found them somewhere safe to stay, you know, and then they end up going back, don't be like, oh, you know, that's it. I'm done with that person. I'm done with that situation, you know, right? I helped a person once. Their partner came and found them. Within 24 hours, they were back in that situation. You know, it took another year and another baby for that person to come back to us again, right? But then that person, that time they left, and now they're in another state and they're thriving, you know? Supposing I had said to that person, nah, because the last time we helped you, you were gone back. You know, oh, you sure you want to leave? No, if the person reaches out for you for help, then you help them as best as you can, you know, without any conditions. That's what I would say. Right. No, thank you so much, Khalidah. I will put in the links to humafaith.org in my show notes, and the link to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Domestic Violence Hotline. Yes. If you are in an abusive relationship, please seek help. Yeah. I mean, you can reach out to Khalidah, you can reach out to me. We will help you get the help you need. Yeah. Because it's no good staying. It is never okay to sustain any form of abuse, no matter what your situation is.
And the situation is hard, but know that you have people who are willing to help you, just like Khalidah. I think you're amazing, Khalidah. You know that. I think that you're amazing. And thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
And agreeing to share all of this with us. It is so important for everybody to know these things, because that's the thing. We still refuse to speak openly about this when we desperately need to. For any of this to change, we have to talk about it, and we have to recognize it for what it is. It's wrong, and it should not be perpetuated anymore.
Yeah.
So for everyone who has been watching and listening in, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you take away, all the incredible information Khalidah has given to us, and please help DAAWN out in doing the wonderful work they do through Huma-Faith. And until next time, y'all take care of yourself, and may peace be on you all.